As far as business coaches go, I'm a pretty gentle one. I know what it's like to struggle with chronic illness, I've previously been a carer, and I know how hectic life can get. However, this podcast episode is about the time where I did give a little tough love to my takeoff students, and for one of them in particular, it resulted in quadrupling her best income month ever. And so I want to share that one with you today because I think it's a really helpful perspective. And even though it might seem like it's a little tough love, I'm going to deliver it very gently and with lots of practical advice. Not only that, because it's day 2 of Tashmas, I do have a special gift for you at the end of today's episode as well. This is episode number 487 of the Heart-Centered Business Podcast, which means you can find all the relevant links and the show notes for today over at tashcorbin.com/487. Let's jump in. I promise I'll be gentle. Hello, I'm Tash Corbin, a business strategist and mentor based on the Sunshine Coast in Australia. The mission of this podcast is to help heart-centered entrepreneurs to make more money and in doing so, change the world for the better. This podcast was recorded on the lands of the Gubbi Gubbi and Jinnaburra people. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. In April of this year, I ran a special event for the students of my Takeoff program. Every now and then I run a different event or will have a special intensive coaching period where I address what I can see might be a challenge that some of the students might be facing in growing their business and achieving their goals. And at that time, I could see that there were a lot of people who were struggling with consistently getting leads in their business. And by leads, I mean people who are actively interested in working with them, people who are close to considering purchasing an offer, and having people to have conversations with about your work and to ask them qualifying questions is a really powerful way to not only generate more income in your business, but also go deep on how you can refine your messaging to ensure that it's doing a great job of speaking to the value proposition of working with you and address any of those objections that people might be thinking before they jump in to purchase. So I ran the Leads at Speed event in April, and in one of the workshops, this little statement popped out of my mouth. It was unplanned, as some of these little genius comments and remarks often are, and it really resonated with the Takeoff students. And that statement was, if the only leads you are getting are people asking you, then you're not being proactive enough about drumming up leads in your business. This came because one of the first things that we do in Leads at Speed is ensure that we are collecting up all the leads you already have or leads that you've had in the past that may have gone cold, and ensuring that you have a really strong follow-up process and you're proactively looking after the leads that you have. Because the fastest way to dry up fresh leads is to neglect the leads you already have in your business. So one of the things that we were doing in one of the early workshops was collecting up all the existing leads. And I had asked people to have a little look and see where did those leads come from? Who initiated the conversation? And that's where this tough love statement came out. If the only leads you're getting are people asking you, then you're not being proactive enough in drumming up leads in your business. And as a business owner, especially online, and especially if you use content marketing as a strategy, it can be easy to fall into the pattern or the habit of thinking that if you put out content consistently, then the leads will come to you. But that's only a small part of the picture. It's actually your job to actively get out there and find the hot leads in your audience, especially in the early stages of business, and especially if you are having a little drought of leads coming into your business. If they're not coming in consistently, that doesn't mean you need to improve the quality of the content that you're putting out. That doesn't mean you need to spread yourself thinner across multiple platforms. That doesn't mean that you need to double the number of emails you're sending every week. The first thing we want to look at is actually, what is your lead generation strategy? And is it simply sit and wait for leads to come in? If so, we need to make some changes there first. Not to blow my own trumpet too hard, but I can tell you that the Takeoff students, aka Toffees, who participated in Leads at Speed absolutely loved it. Not only that, we had some spectacular results, including someone who uncovered 147 potential leads that they had just kind of faded out of conversation with. We also had someone who was asked to do a proposal for their biggest project ever from someone who they didn't think was a lead, but when they actually asked a couple of qualifying questions, they were. And one student in particular who'd previously only had a $1,500 month as her biggest income month had a $6,000 month, making sales to leads she actively engaged with and followed up during the Leads at Speed process and the following month. And for the business owners who are well established and for whom a $6,000 month may not be a stretch goal for them, I just want you to remember back to when you were first establishing your business and what a difference it would have made to be able to quadruple even one of those teeny tiny first months that you had as a business owner, and the sense of possibility and the sense of confidence that it gives you as a business owner as well. And to be able to do that just by changing your strategy around lead generation, not by having to write hundreds and hundreds more posts on socials, not by having to write fancy, pushy, aggressive, bro marketing kind of emails, not by having to embrace a whole new platform or learn a new strategy, but simply by changing your lead generation and follow-up strategy. I think it's pretty spectacular. Now, I'm not going to be doing the entire Leads at Speed training here for you on the podcast. I'll save that one for my fabulous Toffees and my accelerators. But I did want to share with you 4 things that she did differently as a result of our Leads at Speed process, because they're fairly practical. I think that they can be implemented very quickly, and generating more leads in your business has a direct relationship with the sales that you're making. A lot of people become obsessed with follower numbers on social media and even their mailing list size. But the truth of the matter is that those things don't have a direct relationship with the sales that you're making. If you want to double your sales, doubling your followers on Instagram won't automatically achieve that goal. Similarly, if you wanted to double your sales, doubling the number of people on your mailing list also will not magically achieve that goal. But there is a very direct relationship between the hot leads that you have and the sales that you're making. So if you had double the number of hot leads that you're having sales conversations with, chances are you would actually double your sales. Not only that, if you're still learning how to do sales conversations and how to really nail your messaging, for a lot of people, doubling their leads doesn't just double their sales. And in this person's case, it quadrupled her sales. So what did she do differently? Well, number 1, lowered the lead bar. And what I mean by that is lowered the bar that someone had to meet in order to be identified as a lead in her business. If someone replies to an email that you send to your mailing list, they are a potential lead. If you are having a one-to-one conversation with someone on the DMs on Facebook or Instagram, they are a potential lead. Anyone who's actively engaging with your content consistently, they are also a potential lead in your business. And rather than waiting for those people to actively reach out and ask you about working together, there are ways that you can qualify and ask questions of those people, engage with those people in order to ascertain how likely is it that they are a lead in your business. And ensuring that you follow up with those people consistently is mission critical. So rather than waiting for someone to ask you what your packages are before you pop them in your lead management system, because we all have a lead management system, don't we? Rather than waiting for someone to say, hey, how do I work with you? You need to be proactively going out there and finding people who may be interested, who may be considering it, or who may be the exact right fit and they love your content, but they haven't yet connected the dots about working together. So the first thing that this person did when she heard my tough love statement about proactively getting out there and finding the leads in her business was that she lowered the bar and she went through all of her DMs since she had started her business and found where perhaps someone had asked a question and she'd replied to them, but then she'd never followed up with them ever again. She had blog posts that people had asked for the link to. She'd sent them the link to the blog post, but she never checked if they'd ever read it. She never asked a question about why they were particularly interested in that topic. They are potential leads in your business. So step number 1 is lower the bar and ensure that if you do identify a potential lead in your business, you have some form of system that actually captures that and ensures that you are following up with them proactively. Now, inside the Takeoff program, we have a lead management system template that we use, but you can do it in a simple spreadsheet. You can use the little flag for follow-up function in Instagram and Facebook Messenger. Like there's so many different ways that you can keep on top of who the leads might be in your business and who you need to follow up with. And for a lot of people, they think, oh, no, that's just so much extra workload and that would take up so much time. And to that I say, this is time that has a direct relationship to sales. Can you say that the other things you're doing and that you're using that time on are the same? Are they really directly correlating to the number of sales that you're making? Or is it just creating content that could go out to some strangers on the internet and whether it turns into a sale or not, you have no idea? So step number 1 is lower the bar. The second thing that she did really well was creating a nurture to invite bridging strategy. So if you've listened to the podcast for a while or you've worked with me before on business and marketing strategy, you'll probably have heard me talk about the client attraction process. And that is the journey that your audience goes on from finding you to buying from you. And that involves reach, getting in front of them, nurture, building a relationship, invite, qualifying leads, and convert, making the sale. And for a lot of people, they're doing a lot of nurturing, but it's not progressing to the invite stage of the client attraction process. And the invite stage is where you're really identifying who are those hot leads in your business. So the things that we did with her were she created 10 qualifying questions. So whenever she had a one-on-one conversation with people in DMs or email, whenever someone replied to an email she sent to her list, whenever someone was particularly actively engaged in the comments on her socials, she created 10 go-to questions that she could ask people that would not only help her to know where they're at in the journey and whether or not they might be a lead, but also kept that conversation going and allowed her to be helpful and do more nurturing of those potential leads. So qualifying questions are something that I'm very, very passionate and vocal about. And they're the type of question that it's helpful to the person to answer, and it's helpful to you to know whether they're a lead or not. So for example, when someone requested that blog and said, oh yes, I'd love for you to send me the link to that blog, I'd love to read that article, rather than just saying, here's the link to the article and leaving the conversation hanging, And what we were calling those during Leads at Speed was the dingle dangle leads, because I do love myself a fun word. And so she left her leads dingling and dangling because all she did was just sent them the blog post that they'd asked for the link to. Instead, now she'd created 10 qualifying questions that whenever she answered a message, she could pick one that seemed relevant or refine it to be more relevant and ask people those questions. So let's say your business is in the parenting space and someone says to you, yes, I'd love to get that copy of that blog post you were referring to in your reel. So you send them the link to the blog post and ask, how old are your kids? Amazing, right? Like it's such a simple, straightforward question, but it's actually building that relationship. That's further nurturing. And then the next follow-up question might be, what are the things you're struggling with the most? Or what time of day are you finding the most challenging to be gentle in your parenting? You know, these types of questions give you such insight into what's going on for people, but also it's really lovely for your audience member to have someone who actually cares, who maybe have some more detailed advice or some more strategies they could share with you or another resource. Often when I'm asking qualifying questions, it's because I have so many freebies, I have so many podcast episodes, I have so many resources that I haven't even shared publicly, but I freely and easily share those with people in one-to-one conversations because I love helping out and I know that building these relationships is really good for my business. Another thing that we did for her in creating this nurture to invite bridging strategy was we developed a one-to-one nurture freebie. So we came up with 3 things that she could do for her audience free of charge, one-on-one, that would help them, and also the people who would ask for that freebie would likely be in the journey in a place where they're probably likely to be a lead. So let's say that you are a web developer and you love helping to overhaul people's websites to make them more effective at growing their mailing list, more effective at making sales. Well, if you're looking for some hot leads in your business, offering to do a free 5-minute screen recorded video where you go and visit someone's website and give them strategic insight and feedback on what might need to be improved would be super valuable, right? Not only is that really helpful to the people who say yes to it, the people who say yes to it are probably worried that their website needs a bit of an overhaul. And if you are really good at doing that review and you're giving them some fabulous insights into how the website could be improved, why wouldn't the next step be for them to get you to do those improvements for them? Now, this is where a lot of people get stuck as well because they think, well, I'm giving away my expertise for free. But if you have a complete lack of leads in your business, wouldn't you rather do some 5-minute videos to get yourself some hot leads than not? Wouldn't you rather do that 5-minute video review for, let's say, 3 people a week? And even if none of them turn into clients straight away, having another 3 people out there who have seen you in action, know that you're really good at what you do, and could refer their friends, family, colleagues, co-workers over to you, like, wouldn't you rather develop those relationships and have this strategy as a regular part of how you attract leads? And I can tell you, having helped multiple web developers get their businesses off the ground, this little nurture to invite strategy is one that does result in sales. Those sales might come in immediately. They might come in a couple of months from now. But ultimately, wouldn't you want to be setting yourself up for consistent clients coming in? And that's what something like this does. Now, the one-to-one nurture freebie, importantly, is one-on-one. So you're giving personalized advice to the individual. And I like to find something that you can do in 5 to 10 minutes without needing to jump on a call with them. But even if you did have to jump on a call with them, If you've got a real shortage of leads, this is such a powerful use of your time. Not only are you getting to understand your niche far more clearly, so therefore your content and messaging can actually speak to what's going on for them, but also this is generating leads, and these are leads that you can follow up with. Even if they say, oh, look, it's not the right time right now, then you can say, I'll follow up with you in a couple of months. How does that sound? And trust me when I say that when people started doing this consistently in the Takeoff program, we had so many people making sales. It was spectacular. The final thing that we did to create that nurture to invite bridging strategy was we actually wrote out what are the signs someone is actually keen to buy. Because something that she identified was that she had quite a few lurkers in her audience, but they gave little signs here and there that they were actually keen to buy from her, whether it be the way that they commented or when she was doing these one-on-one nurture freebies. We crafted up the types of things that they would say, the types of questions they might ask that were like green flags. This person is really quite keen to buy. Things like asking what time the calls are on for a program. Things like asking, or what happens if life gets busy between the sessions and I don't do my homework. That is someone who is actively considering working with you. They're considering it so closely, they're starting to work out in their mind whether they're going to be able to implement. That is a green light, green light, green light sign that someone is keen to buy. And so that is an indicator that someone is a hot lead. So they were the 3 strategies we used for nurture to invite. The 10 qualifying questions, having those on hand, one-to-one nurture freebie, to start engaging with people far more consistently one-on-one, and mapping out what the signs are that someone is keen to buy so that your reticular activating system can actually keep an eye out for those signs amongst your audience. We are so programmed to look for signs of rejection coming that sometimes we're ignoring the signs that someone is super keen. The third thing that we did was she actually decided to delay her automations, scaling, and ads until she was getting 10 leads a month from connected one-on-one strategies and got that process streamlined. Because what we recognized on one of the Q&A calls was that she was working so hard on creating automated funnels, on creating funnel ads on Facebook, that she was running out of time to do her one-to-one nurture and invite strategies that were actively generating leads. And when I had a look at some of her strategies for her funnels and her opt-ins in particular, they weren't particularly niched. The messaging wasn't particularly effective and resonant. And it actually showed me that she wasn't having enough one-on-one conversations with active leads to be able to get hyper-specific with her messaging. So instead, she agreed upon my advice that she would put the automations, scaling strategies, and ads into the toy box and instead spend the next couple of months refining her lead generation strategies and practicing them in 20 to 30 minutes a day, 3 days a week, and until she'd got to the point where she could sustain her 10 leads a month strategies, she would wait. I didn't have to do much convincing after Leads at Speed and her 6K month, but I think that this is something that a lot of people do resist. They feel like putting together a new opt-in to get 100 people on their mailing list is a far more effective use of their time than sending DM follow-up messages to people who had been messaging them the month before. Because, and I totally understand this, the potential feels bigger from an opt-in that's a broadcast strategy, right? It feels bigger. 100 people on your list feels like it's more valuable to your business than, say, 5 DM conversations. But I can tell you from hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of businesses that I've worked with over the years, In my experience, those 5 DM conversations are far more valuable to your business. And for a lot of people, they assume they don't have 5 people to have DM conversations with, but actually they do. We just need to do step 1 and lower the bar. So step number 3 was delaying automation, scaling, and ads until she was generating 10 leads a month from connected one-on-one strategies, and she'd worked how to streamline those strategies into something that was really repeatable, really easy. I've even seen a photo since then of her checklist. So she's made herself a little checklist of the things that she does every single week to actively generate leads. And she can do that in a really streamlined, succinct amount of time. So now she can go and grow her audience with more potential leads and grow her audience with more people, knowing that she's got the lead gen part of the process nailed. The final thing that she did differently was she re-engaged with 50 people from her prior year of business. Now, she'd only been working on her business very consistently for 6 to 7 months, but she had already set up her Facebook page a couple of years earlier. So where did she find those 50 people? Well, she started with her emails. She looked for anyone where someone had emailed her or someone had replied to one of her mailing list emails, and she might have answered their question, but she never circled back. She never closed the loop on that conversation because she left them dingling and dangling. She also went through her Facebook page and looked at all the DMs, and anyone where someone had asked a question or they'd had a conversation, but she'd never circled back to check back in with them. She flagged those for follow-up. And also she reviewed her calendar system to see if anyone had done a free intro session with her, a sales call with her, or even paid sessions with her, and they were just left dingling and dangling. She had never proactively asked the question of them about whether they wanted to keep working together, whether they were interested in finding out how to work together, or in the sales conversation, they had specifically said, oh, this is really valuable, but not right now. And she'd left it up to them to circle back when it was the right time instead of proactively following up with them. So she collected up 50 plus names. I think it ended up being like 75, but she, in the Leads at Speed workshop, found 50 names, and every day she started her day just connecting with 3 of those people. So it didn't take long for her to have some of those conversations reignited. There were several people that she ended up making sales to that came from this process. And in a lot of cases, she would circle back and say, hey, remember when we were talking about this 6 months ago? And the person would say, oh my gosh, thank you so much for following up with me. I've been meaning to reach out. And in the Leads at Speed threads, there were so many people sharing the exact same experience, that people were actively re-engaging and grateful for being followed up. And it's no surprise that we avoid doing things like this because we are rejection-sensitive creatures. We make assumptions that if someone wanted to reconnect with us, or if someone wanted to circle back, or if they really wanted to work with us, they would have reached out by now. But ultimately, people are busy, people are distracted, and it's not their job to be proactive about working with you. That's your job. It's simple, but it's confronting. So just to recap the 4 things she did differently. Number 1, lowered the bar of what qualifies someone as a lead and got really clear on how she was going to keep track of those and take the lead. Number 2, creating a nurture to invite bridging strategy. Number 3, delaying automation, scaling, and ads until the lead generation strategies are actually working and they are solidified and streamlined. And number 4, re-engaging with old conversations via social emails, calendar checks, and finding who those dingly-dangly leads are and initiating from there. Now, I hope that this wasn't too tough love for you to hear me say that if the only leads you're getting are people who are asking you, you're not doing your job properly. It makes me so uncomfortable saying it that way. But hopefully you can see there with the strategy to back it up, this is really solid business advice. And lead generation is mission critical to sustainable, consistent, ongoing growth of your business. So getting good at lead gen, especially in the early stages of business, is a critical skill. And I've even added the Leads at Speed process to my Heart-Centered Business Accelerator, which is for more established business owners, because even established business owners need a reminder that lead generation is the part of your client attraction process that directly correlates to making sales. Which brings me to today's gift as part of Tashmas. It's day 2 of Tashmas, and my gift for 3 very lucky people is to join me in the Lead Generation Penthouse Retreat in February 2026. And I've got $500 off for the first 3 people to jump in and grab this Tashmas gift. The Lead Generation Penthouse is going to be held on the Sunshine Coast in February 2026, the week after the Heart-Centered Virtual Business Conference. So the theme of virtual conference this year is lead generation. And for those people who want to get in the room with a bunch of very ambitious, very driven people who are then going to actively implement those lead generation strategies and nail lead gen in their business, we are getting together in a couple of penthouses on the Sunshine Coast to do it in style. You can find all the details of the Lead Gen Penthouse Retreat over with the show notes of today's episode, as well as the instructions on how to get your $500 off. Find out more at tashcorbin.com/487. And thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. I'll see you tomorrow for day 3 of Tashmas. And until then, I cannot wait to see you shine. Bye for now.